So if just the knowledge and the understanding that a philosophy of freedom, a reality of freedom exists outside of your borders, once you find that out, you're going to want it. That's why the management of information across borders is so important. So even if there were no movements towards emancipation in the United States of the enslaved people, just the knowledge of it happening elsewhere and it arriving, and the philosophies, the literature, the intellectual reality and the factual reality coming on the American shores, it's going to spread. Nothing exists in a silo. Nothing exists in a vacuum. That's my point.
So how does that idea that nothing exists in a silo relate to the plot of the book? So different questions, right?
Yeah.
Maybe what is the plot? Is there a plot? And how does that question of nobody lives in a silo relate to that plot?
Okay. So the majority of the book takes place in New York City, which I think was a good choice because New York is it's a global community. So within a city like New York City, you have people from various ethnic backgrounds, economic backgrounds, geographic backgrounds, social backgrounds, so on and so on. In a place like New York City, it's difficult to silo yourself. It happens, but the simple fact that you're all there together, you're going to see what's happening. You're going to feel what's happening. You're going to know what's happening. And who is to say you might fall in love with somebody from another village? So with regard to the plot, I think the choice of location works well because it's in a part of the United States.
So it's
where
in New York.
Most of it is in New York City.
So who do we have? Who are the characters?
Who do we have? So we have Rufus.
Rufus Scott, jazz drummer.
Yeah. You have his sister.
His sister.
Yeah.
Do you remember the names?
Her name was
sometimes a little bit difficult.
Sometimes it'd be difficult, right?
Let me
I
look
believe
up
her name was
on,
Ada.
Maybe we just look it up on Wikipedia for
Yeah.
a second that we get the names right. Okay, we just looked up the name list here. Maybe you know what? Let's just maybe if it's a bit difficult. No, we cannot do it. Okay,
that's not good.
I thought that's maybe a good idea, but it's not. You want it on that screen or on the other?
This screen is better. I can look straight ahead.
Okay. So yeah, we have looked at Great Saber at the character list, and we try to just summarize like who are the characters. There are so many characters, and as I understand, they all have sex with each other.
They've all, yes. That's why. You see, that's why it's not just purely a philosophical book. It's not just purely intellectual, but it has sex scenes. So it makes it real. It makes it animated.
It's real sex scenes.
Yeah, they have sex scenes.
So he describes the details, or does he just say they had sex?
He describes it poetically.
Oh, he can, right?
Yeah.
Would you say he's one of the writers who can describe that?
Definitely is.
Yeah?
Definitely is.
Because if I were a writer, which I sometimes am, would I want to write a sex scene?
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
I would want to. I would spend a few weeks basically thinking about it. I would, because readers love it.
Yeah.
Everyone appreciates a well-written sex scene.
Yeah, but the emphasis of you is on well-written.
Well-written. Of course, it cannot just be they have
That's
sex.
maybe where the quality of a writer...
That's where it's tested.
And
right?
you would say he's a good writer.
He's a good writer for that.
So read it for the sex scenes. That sells, right?
So, yeah. So back to the characters. Yeah, Ida Scott. That's Rufus's younger sister, right? So Ida comes into New York City after Rufus's death. And she has all of these ideas of how white people are so prejudiced, and the whole idea of the pain that black people go through because of white people, and all the challenges of being black in America. All of this is in her head naturally, right? She's a woman of her time. Then she falls in love with a white man.
Oh.
And
he falls in love with her?
And he falls in love with her. And that was Rufus's best friend, Vivaldo.
Vivaldo.
Yeah. So Vivaldo is a writer, right? And he starts...
He sounds more educated. Italian.
It sounds Italian, right?
Yeah.
The name Vivaldo.
Yeah, sounds like, I don't know.
Sounds Italian. That's what I thought too. They don't really go so clearly into the book about that, but she falls in love with him and he falls in love with her, and they have a relationship. And he was one of Rufus's best friend, if not Rufus's best friend.
Did he have a sexual relationship with Rufus, or were they just friends?
They were just friends.
Okay.
They were just friends. So she fall in love with him. They fall in love with each other. But Vivaldo struggles with something. He struggles with the guilt of Rufus's death. He feels that he should have done something or should have known that this was possible, that Rufus would go to suicide.
So Rufus didn't let anyone know that he planned suicide?
I think they all knew that he was struggling. They all knew that he was suffering. They all knew of his financial struggles, his professional struggles, his romantic struggles. And that's why Ida was so angry with everyone when she came there. Because in her mind, all of you white people were here and you didn't take care of my brother. And did you not take care of him because he's black? If he was white, would you have taken care of him? Would you have thought about him as more than just an object of sexual attention or an object of musical entertainment? Would you have seen his humanity if he was white? And and if you saw his humanity, could that have saved him?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I actually have here a question in that regard. So there is this quote from James Baldwin, who talks about the book. And I'm sorry, I'm badly informed again. I got that from Wikipedia, I have to say that. So it says, the book has been described as an implicit criticism of the passive romanticization of Black culture. And then Rufus Scott, he describes that. Baldwin describes Rufus Scott as the black corpse floating in the national psyche, as well as Christ figure, a living symbol of suffering black man. That's a lot to process.
It's a bit to process, yeah. Let's go back to the passive romanticization of black culture. Yeah, and that Rufus dealt with that as well.
So what does that mean?
Okay.
Passive romanticization of black culture.
Okay. So something can either be passive or active, right? So the active idea would be, you're black, I want to have sex with you. You're black, that's a more active form of romanticization.
An active racism.
Well, I wouldn't go there yet. Of course, it's all racism. But the opposite of a passive form is the form in which it's direct. Right? So in the indirect, the passive, we keep you as your friend, or the white people would have kept Rufus as his friend, or as their lover, but at the core, they're more interested in the benefits that he brings as a black person, which one could argue are the sexual benefits because of the sexual reputation of black men, right? Or as a talented musician because of the reputation of black people being good with music.
Or also that they maybe present themselves as more liberal, as
correct,
out, maybe?
Correct. Or the idea that I am, nowadays we say woke, because I have a black friend, or because I'm dating a black person, right?
Yeah.
So it makes you really wonder, and it's a very good quote, did they love him?
Yeah.
Did his friends love him? Did his lovers truly love him? Or were they in love with his blackness? Did they see him, or did they see his blackness?
Yeah.
And Ida, she struggles with that.
You know what? I also wonder, when you say, did they see his blackness? Can they get through that?
That's the question. Can they get through that? And do we need to give them a certain level of grace and a certain level of empathy and compassion, understanding that it was tremendously difficult for them to get through that? And perhaps some of them did see past that. But it makes you really wonder, is it so difficult? How difficult is it to actually see him? And I think that's why the fact that he committed suicide and the fact that he's a black corpse floating in the psyche of America, it makes sense Because
How to understand that? A black corpse floating in the psyche of
I'll
America.
get to that point in a bit. But you could really look and you can ask yourself. I mean, I'm not saying I understand how suicide works, but it makes me want to ask the question, if he had so many so-called good friends and good lovers, for him to get to the point of suicide, he must have felt like he had no one.
I have another question on
know.
that. So sometimes suicide, some people totalize it and they say it's a very aggressive behavior. I think that's a bit one-sided. I think
so too.
it can be a one-sided behavior that somebody wants to say, oh, you all didn't take notice of
Yeah.
look what happened to me. Would you describe a suicide in these words, or do you see it as a suicide that really results from the suffering and does not involve the ego of, let's say, paying it back to the other characters?
That's where we analyze the character of Rufus and we understand his personality. Rufus is from the reading, you understand that he's a warm and charitable and giving person. His nature is to entertain, to serve, to take care of.
Oh, that's why he's a musician.
That's why he's a musician.
Is it right when I say it has like incorporates a certain
Of
type
course.
of slave culture, or is that?
Well, that's when we go back to the the issue of being black in America, and what we have here, the black corpse. This is actually really profound. Now, I'm having profound thoughts about this, actually. It's actually almost emotional to think about.
Yeah. Why is it emotional?
Because to a large extent, the black man, and one may and definitely the black woman as well, their role in America, in the American experiment, by and large, has always been to the service of whites. Either to the economic service of white in the form of slaves, unpaid labor, or entertainment, or sports. You look at the NFL, black.
Yeah.
You look at the NBA, black.
Or at the music
industry. Mostly black. Jazz, founded by black people. Their role in the American construct, in the American experiment, maybe I'm minimizing, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but it's very clear from this book.
Well, let's say it's one side of what happens in America. Right?
Yes, it's one side. Yeah, it's one side. It's one lane.
But it's an important side.
But it's an important side. It's largely been to the service of whites. And it makes me wonder.
And I mean, like, to be fair, right?
Yeah.
Somehow you have to service white people sometimes. If you're a musician,
of
right?
course.
But you cannot escape that it brings in a historical relationship, right?
You cannot.
So it's not a white person being in the service of a white person, which is like not, I say it like this, perfectly normal in a sense, but once it's a black person in service of a white person, it's somehow also normal.
Yeah, it's more normalized. Because
No, it's normal, but at the same time, there is something that sways in the background. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. There's something that sways in the background. Because, with that, I have a question.
But maybe I'm wrong on that. So
no, we'll analyze it. We'll analyze it. No worries. How many? What were they doing for him? I'm asking now that I'm a bit older and I'm reading and I've had relationships and I've matured.
Yeah.
What did they bring to him?
The white people.
Yeah. What did they bring in his life? What did they give him?
Did they give him something?
He gave them, I'm sure, of course, sex. Everyone gives sex. But then I now remember he was in love with a white woman. And her name was, I'll show it to you, Leona. Yes, Leona was a white woman from the South. Now, Leona came from a very good background. She was pretty well off. And he was abusive towards her.
Yeah.
Rufus. He was physically and emotionally abusive towards her. And that's so hard to unpack.
Yeah, so that's also what I have written down here. So I really wonder, why does Rufus express his sexuality towards white people in violent manners? And I got this here also, it's the quote from Wikipedia. He's sexual with any person who is white, violently sexual because he seeks power.
Because as a black man, as a black man who is not entirely self-examined, who's not examined his full worth and his full capabilities, it's very easy to think that all you have to offer is your body. Because that's the thing that you're praised for. The Jewish people, or white people, and so on, Asians, they're often praised for their intellect. They're often praised for their abilities. But black people, oh, you're so tall. Oh, you're so muscular. Oh, I wonder if your penis is big. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's very easy, if you've not taken the time to know your worth and to know your abilities and to see yourself as more than just something goddamn physical.
So it creates an anger, or does it create anger, or is it?
It's your only way to power. So for example, as an economist or a philosopher or so on, your mind is your power. I do believe that this might be a postmodern view of looking at things, but power runs everywhere. Everyone wants to feel powerful. Everyone wants a sense of power, because without a sense of power, you feel helpless. You feel like the world is trampling on you. Most people want to feel a sense of power, and we look for power in different ways. And if all he understands that his power is his body, the chance that he gets to use his body, he will use it violently, aggressively. And he will exercise and show that I am powerful.